Hey everybody, welcome back to The Hobby Musician. You're joining us today right in the middle of a mini-series where I'm in the process of building my very first set of instruments coming from my initial experience with my brand new laser cutter / CNC machine. Now, there have been several episodes to get us up to this point, so if you want to get caught up, I'm going to go ahead and put some links to some playlists in the corner of the screen right now. So as I'm describing them, if you want to come back and watch those episodes, click right in and you can do it. Now, the first one, obviously, we got the machine, we unboxed it, and I started getting used to its features. Then I did decide I wanted to try building an instrument entirely leaning on the CNC features, and I wanted to do a parallel build where I'm building an instrument leaning entirely on the laser features. And that's one of today's episodes. We're going to be talking about how I created the body, which is right here waiting for the grand reveal later in the video, using entirely the laser features. Now, what I mean by that is, you'll see in another one of our videos, I sit down and I describe a laser cutter is a great tool to help you make comprehensive sets of templates. So I have a whole video where I explain, I'm taking inspiration from other manufacturers. I like this curve, I want to change that. And I make and cut my own set of templates, which I have right here. So for the body, you can see this is the final template that I ended up with. And I kind of did some interesting designs in the template itself. I wanted it to be as easy as possible. So I made sure to have all of the cutouts and things so that I could make one template that would work for the front and the back. So right up here at the top, you can see I designed and made a cutout that would fit so that when I needed to shape the outer edge of the body, I would have this cutout in. But then when I needed to cut out and route out the neck pocket, I could remove this cutout. The same thing is true with the electronics cavity. I made sure to design this second little piece, this cutout, that fits in here. So when I've got this stuck to the top, I can use the inner circles to make sure I've got all the control pots where they need to go. Then I take this off and I go to the back and I pop it on the back. And now I have an outer cut that'll help me get the top lip. And I have this insert that I can put in there to get the areas for where I set in the magnets. So this template is what we're going to use primarily for all of the shaping and featuring of the body. Now with that out of the way, what is this body going to look like? Okay, well, to set this up, if you're a fan of the channel, and I hope you are, way back a long time ago, we did the very first builds that I ever attempted from scratch. And I used shipping pallets and tore them down, used that lumber. And one of the very first instruments I built was this one right here. Now, there's a lot of things about this one I'm not proud of. I didn't know anything, and I didn't know what I didn't know at the time. But one thing that I ended up really loving was I loved the look of it. I decided back then I wanted this sort of subway tile checkerboard pattern. And for this one, what I did, I took some of the surface boards of those shipping pallets, planed them down really thin, and you can see from the side, I just made a 1/4 inch sort of veneer where I switched these up. Now, the other thing that happened was this was all the same wood. It just was such crappy wood that some of it was kind of darker, some of it was lighter, and it ended up giving a kind of interesting visual pattern, which I liked. But I also realized on this particular one, if I spin this around, the back was just junk bulk wood that I put together. So I thought to myself, what if I use all my new skills, my new machines, what if I try recreating a base like this, except I go the extra mile. I get good quality wood, I get this pattern, and I wanted to see if I could make sure the pattern would go all the way through. So you could see it from the front, see it from the back, and get the same effect. So that was the goal that I set out on. Okay, well, what's the first step? I went to one of my local timber stores, and this shop kind of specializes in smaller projects, kind of more, I get finishing work, not the big bulk construction lumber stores. They get all kinds of like exotic, cool looking wood in there. So I went to their little cut off scrap bin where they put the smaller strips that maybe they're working on a bigger job, and you can individually buy pieces like that. And I went through and started to look for interesting tones, interesting colors. Okay, I started to find them. You can see in this picture, I was able to pick up really cool darker tones, lighter tones, the whole gamut, but they were in strips. So the very first job is I needed to make sure I could get them down to the dimensions that I wanted. Now I wanted to make sure that I still had that 1" by 2" kind of strip. So I start running them through the table saw, planing them down, and then ultimately I get out the miter saw and I cut little tiny blocks that are going to serve as the building blocks, quite literally, for my body. Now you can see here, I was able to sort them all by color, and then I was able to do some randomizing. I could take all the different tones of wood and put them together to make interesting two-toned little blocks. Now, I embarked on a lot of gluing. So the first thing that I needed to do was I needed to get all of my blocks and I needed to glue individual blocks together. And I wanted to make sure that they were all straight. So I sort of took 2 scrap boards that I had and made a channel where I could clamp that channel together, and no matter how much pressure I would squeeze on these, there was no way they could slide apart from kind of the sliminess of the glue. And it kept everything in really tight, square level blocks. Well, that step then led to a whole bunch of glued together cubes, essentially. Well, then I needed to take my cubes and I needed to glue my cubes in this offset pattern in long strips. So that's another round of gluing. After that, after I had all the strips, I needed to glue the strips together to make the final plank. Now, as you can see in these pictures that I'm putting up, as I was going through those steps, that allowed me to get to the place where I had a blank, a kind of constructed checkerboard blank that was going to be big enough to kind of encapsulate this template that I had made with the laser cutter. All right, well, it gets time to now start cutting it out. So I glue down the template onto the board and I start using the jigsaw to do the rough edge. I get out the router to now do that fine, close, curvature, really smooth around all the edges. And along the way, in the pickup cavities and the neck cavity, all of those kinds of things, I'm able to start using that template and drills to get out the bulk material. And along the way, I'm using that template to help me get all of the pockets. After all of that is done, I am able to then remove that template and I go around the edge of it with a curve over bit. So just taking off the template, everything was real blocky, flat top, flat sides. I wanted to have a curve around the whole thing. But you can see in this picture, even after all of that's done, there's a lot of scorch marks on it. Well, the reality was I wanted to make sure I went very, very slowly, because if I take a router bit and I go too fast, there's a chance that I could chip off, or one of the blades could catch like a connection, a glued connection, and maybe fling off a chunk of wood, leaving me with a hole. But the trade-off is when you go slow, you can end up with some scorch marks. So it took a lot of sanding. If you get nothing else from this video, you could put away all the pictures, put away all the time lapses. Most of this project was sanding. I mean, that's what it feels like to me. I had to do so much sanding to get the scorch marks off, but beyond that, to also get a nice final finish on this body. So the time has come. With all of that buildup, let's get a grand reveal of where we stand now. Here is that final body. So as we talked about, starting off with the goal of getting a checkerboard pattern, but with kind of more depth and interest, you can see not only do I have different tones, I've got different grain patterns, which I can look at. So all of the placements of everything is set up where the template was. My pickup cavities, neck pocket is all right up to where I need it to be, hyper specific because of that laser cut design. But then along the edge, nice and rounded off edges so it feels good when you're holding it. Now flipping to the back, one of the features that I've started to do on all of my builds now is I do this inlaid magnet technique for putting on the pickup cover, or the pickup cavity cover. I like that it's kind of sleeker, it feels fancier, and it gets rid of screws. So on the back, now going over the whole thing, you won't feel any bumps of screws. So I got a little indent here, and when you kind of get in there, you can see that I've inlaid magnets on the cover, inlaid magnets there, so that when you come back, you pop that on if you have to make adjustments or swap things out, and you're good to go. Including even this nice comfort belly cut for extended playing sessions. And that checkerboard pattern is right here on the back, just like I wanted. Now, sure, there's still stuff to do. We haven't yet made the neck, so I'm going to move on to that next. Once the neck gets made, I'm going to have to drill the holes, get the screws, the set screws in here for that, and to get the finishing oil on here. So there's still some to do, but a lot of that stuff is just kind of finishing touches. The main majority part of the work has been done. And I gotta say, I am really, really digging this so far. So I can't wait to see this in its finished state, and I hope you can't wait either. So, as always, I hope you got something out of today's video. And until next time, play on, my friends, play on.